So what we find out from talking to a lot of folks is there's a lot of stress in marriages. Stress comes from conflict, pressure, and frustration. So if you just simply would sit down and say, okay, our family is too stressed, and have three big buckets: conflict, pressure, and frustration. You probably could identify what's stressing you. And then you have to decide, hey, what of these things do I control and what of these things do I not control? If I control it, I'm responsible for it. If I can't control it, it's not on my responsibility list. I don't do much with it. I'm part of a board, the Huntsville Police Citizens Foundation. We sponsored a 10K run today to raise money for the police officers. Not just money when one of them gets shot, but money to help them have therapy and other things. And so they did this run. Well, I was invited to be on this board after I agreed to be here. And so I said, guys, I'm going to be out of town. What can I do for the run today? They said, make sure the weather's nice. I said, I'm in sales, not management. Okay, I don't control the weather. I don't worry about the weather, but also I'm not a farmer, so I don't have to worry about the weather. But when you start talking about, hey, what do we stress, then you really only can stress about the things you have control over. It's okay to be concerned, it's okay to notice it, but as far as just real stress, the anxious, don't be anxious for anything that Paul talks about in Ephesians, or that Philippians, is that anxiety. It literally comes from a word to be pulled in two directions. Don't fall apart over anything. It's okay to worry about your kids, worry about your education, that's a different kind of worry than they're talking about in the Bible. You know, there are people who are conscientious, who are aware of these things, and there's people who preoccupy with it. Well, I believe the only three things we actually control is our time, our money, and our energy. I don't know how much time I've got, but I get to choose what I do with my time. I really sometimes can't control how much money I have access to, but I get to decide what I do with it. If you make $40,000 a year and you live on $35,000, you'll feel like you're wealthy. If you make $200,000 and you live on $201,000, you feel like you're poor. You have to decide what you do with your money and your time. And then we also have a little bit of control about what we do with our energy. Well, I ran across this thing, it's called an Eisenhower box. Now, when I ran across it, it was done like a grid. And Eisenhower, obviously, is the guy who did it. That's what's called an Eisenhower box. And he says, there are things in life that are important, and they're set in opposition to things that are not important. And there's things in life that are urgent, and they're set in opposition to things that are not urgent. So if you divide that into four quadrants, you have things that are important and urgent. You have things that are important and not urgent. You have things that are urgent and not important. And then you have things that are not urgent and not important. And so when you start talking about what am I going to do with my time, my money, and my energy, hey, how do we save this $200 my wife wanted to save? You know, what do we do with that? What did we buy and why did we buy it? Well, what box does that go in? What's important to do with my time today? What's important to do with my money today? And so if you just decide what's urgent and important, important, not urgent, urgent, not important, not important, not urgent, well, that all sounds really, really good until you start deciding, hey, what goes in what box, right? I did this with my daughter when she went to college. Having her nails done was urgent and important. We worked that just a little bit, all right? And so how do you decide what goes there? And I really, like I said, I borrowed this. I saw it in a Stephen Covey book, and he got it from Eisenhower, and I didn't use it much. And about 7 years into being a police chaplain, I realized I was a glorified mascot. I'm the bad guy on training day. I hide in buildings. They come find me. I can teach you how to die in a building. I get to teach them some rope stuff. But, you know, when we actually get called out and I get on the big black truck and go out there with them, I don't do anything. I occasionally knock on the door and say, hey, the SWAT team's in town. You want to leave your house? You know, sometimes I go evacuate stuff. I hold babies in the street. I crawl in the bushes and taking coffee to snipers. But I really don't have a tactical purpose. So I thought, you know, I'm going to certify as a tactical medic. I found a group called Suarez International, and I paid to go to a 4-day weekend seminar on tactical medicine. And I thought I was going to learn how to do IVs, hemothoraxes, pneumothoraxes, field tracheotomy with a pencil, you know, cool stuff. The guy was talking about sucking chest wounds. I said, is there a chest wound that doesn't suck? Okay, I mean, consider, you know what they teach you in tactical medicine? bleeding and breathing. That's it, nothing cool. If he's not breathing, start him. If he is bleeding, stop it. That's it. I told Doc Mead, I said, that's a pretty expensive class I went to learn how to tie a tourniquet. I'm a knot guy, and I know how to do chest compressions now. Okay? And it's either staying alive or another one bites the dust, depending on the rhythm you like. but I said, why in the world do you teach this class and it's bleeding and breathing? Because in an urban environment, other than bleeding and breathing, you've got hours to get people to a hospital. You can take them in the back of your pickup and do chest compressions. You've got all kinds of time. He goes, but bleeding and breathing has immediate consequences. And when he said that, I thought of the Eisenhower box. Because when I start talking about what am I doing with my time, my money, and my energy, the things that are important and urgent have immediate consequences. If I don't do it today, something bad's going to happen. If I don't attune to it, if I don't pay for it, if I don't fix it, if I don't consume it, if I don't show up for it, there will be an immediate consequence. The problem we have in our country is our young people are growing up with a sense of the idea that they deserve everything they have. They don't know how to work for things. I run into lots of people who have bought the things that they want and they can't afford the things that they need. That's when you deal with immediate consequences. So what am I doing with my time, my money, my energy today? Okay, I can put gas in the car, I can put food in my mouth, and I can put power in the house. Or I can go to the movies or go to the track or buy a scratch-off ticket or pay my stupid tax at the lottery. What I do with those three things, they're urgent and important because they have immediate consequences. Now, things that are important but not urgent, those consequences are delayed. Now you are going to pay those consequences. They're there. You're just not going to pay them today. You don't have to work out. You don't have to eat healthy. If you're under 40, you have all the cherry cheesecake you want. On your 40th birthday, cholesterol will call you collect. Hey man, remember us? You don't have to spend time with your kids. You don't really have to spend time with your spouse. You don't have to attend every church service. You don't have to invest. You don't have to study. You don't have to save. You don't have to work out. It's super, super important, but you're not going to pass or fail the test today. But you're going to have the test. You will cash that check. And so what I do with my time, my money, and my energy, things are really, really important, but nobody's pulling my chain for it. Nobody's asking me about it. Nobody's banging on the door. So it's not urgent. So it has delayed consequences. Things that are urgent but not important have perceived consequences. You don't have to have an iPhone 37. The iPhone you have makes phone calls, crushes candy, and takes pictures. Ta-da! You don't need anything else. Yet we get the idea I've got to have the latest and the greatest. You don't have to go to the movie the night it opens. It'll be in the theater 6 months. It'll be on cable in 9. If you go to the movie the night it opens, people who wear costumes will be there. You don't want to be in that crowd anyway. There's all kind of things going on. Your kids don't have to play 19 sports. You can miss Little League to go to the beach with your grandparents. The Major League Scouts probably won't be there till the 7th grade, you think? There's all kinds of things that we get the idea we got to have, we got to do, and they're urgent because society tells us this is what you got to do. You know, I'm doing a special study on, use of technology with kids. And kids think the number of likes, the number of friends, and the number of followers they have on the internet is more important than their grades. And by the time they invest in this and then get over here and they can't get admitted to college, it's too late to go back and redo it. And they get sucked into these things that are urgent, but they're not important. And then you have things that are not urgent and not important, and those things have zero consequences. They don't matter. 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years. If it doesn't have an impact in one of those 5 5s, I'm not going to worry about it. Now, I realize that I'm in rural Missouri. I put cutting grass right there. I hope that doesn't make me a bad person. But if I don't do anything, in November, the good Lord will kill the whole grass. The whole yard's gone in November. If I got a choice to cut my grass or take my dad fishing, I'm taking my dad fishing. If I got a chance to cut my grass or go for a walk with my wife and her little dog, I'm going for a walk. If it gets so out of control, I can hire a teenager and a pizza and he'll cut my grass. I can burn the thing. I'm not going to live, and I'm goofing around about the yard. I live a little bit out in the country. I'm not in an HOA. Nobody named Karen tells me what to do in my yard. That's why I have a zip line. Anyway, but there's some things there that I go, they don't have any consequence. If I don't do it, it's not going to matter. And so when I start thinking about what am I going to spend my money with, my time with, and my energy, we kind of do that. And my wife and I talk about, hey, what can we do with this money now? What has to be done with our money? Well, there's some things that need to be done. She worked so we'd have health insurance. I was not able to be in private practice as a self-employed guy and us not have health insurance. And she worked for 25 years as a teacher, so we'd have health insurance. And if we hadn't, I've had enough medical emergencies that we've been in bankruptcy at least 4 times. I've been in the hospital a lot. My goal, my New Year's resolution every year is start and finish the year with the same parts in the same arrangement. It's unbelievable. It always happens to me while I'm hunting. It's not hunting accidents, it just happens while I'm hunting. But so she made some decisions about what we did at that time. Now, we could have spent that money differently. We could have spent that time differently. She didn't start teaching school till our daughter started school. And we sort of paid extra for her health insurance so that she could stay home with Lonnie Beth. I said, hey, she's going to be 6 one time. She's going to be 14 one time. When I opened up my practice, I said, I got the rest of my life to make money. But I'll be at that school or at that house when she gets off the bus or I pick her up. I close my practice every day at 3 o'clock till she graduated. And now that she's moved away, I work a little later sometimes. But we made an intentional investment in the present lives of our children because we thought that had some immediate and some delayed consequences. We do everything everybody else wanted to do. And so when you start talking about how am I going to spend my time, how am I going to spend my money, how am I going to spend my energy, that's kind of the way I do that. And I think, what are the consequences? Are they immediate? Are they delayed? Are they perceived? Or are there none? Now, in a room full of people who come to a marriage seminar on a beautiful Saturday in the spring, I think we're probably all on the same page with urgent and important. I think other than the irresponsible grass cutting comment, we're probably on the same page with what's not urgent and what's not important. And what we should be doing with this is the priorities should look like this. But what happens when we get out of balance is the priorities look like this. And when these two things trade places, we lose balance for our souls. Now, I think you and I would agree on what's urgent and not important. I think we'd agree what's not urgent, not important. But we get caught up in this perceived thing, and that becomes more important than the thing that's delayed. And by the way, you talk about emotional intelligence. The ability to understand my own emotions. And take the ability to understand my own emotions and do what's known as self-regulation. Self-regulation is delayed gratification, impulse control, and motivation. How willing am I to endure difficult circumstances to get a long-term reward? That's the difference between mentally ill people, truly mentally ill people, and people who are healthy. It's the difference between healthy people and people who are maladaptive. It is the marker for success, emotional intelligence. Not your kid's GPA, not the SAT, not the ACT, but how emotionally intelligent. Do they have insight? Do they understand their own emotions? Can they do self-regulation? Can they deal with feelings of failure, anxiety, disappointment, all those kind of things? And can they use that insight to self-regulate, delayed gratification, impulse control, and motivation? Guess what happens when you start analyzing somebody who doesn't have emotional intelligence? Guess where they live? They live in this box right here. Because they can't delay gratification. They can't do impulse control, and they won't invest long-term efforts into a reward. And you'll find out that these two theories are written by two different people, but they agree that where the dysfunction occurs is people who take things that are urgent but not important and let them supersede the things that are important but not urgent. So what's important to you? What's the most important thing in your marriage? God first, and your first responsibility to God as your parent, as your partner. Spouse before children. Children before friends. Spirituality before career. But what happens is we end up camping out in this bottom left quadrant, and we don't do that. Theoretically, you start your marriage by yourself, you end your marriage by yourself. They're supposed to leave the nest, and you guys will be there by yourselves, and if you're not friends while they're there, you won't be friends after they leave. And so we invest our time into this perception that there's no such thing as quality time. All time is quality. That's it. You know, my daughter, when she talks about growing up, doesn't necessarily remember the trips to exotic places. She remembers I picked her up every Thursday after school and went to the mall. Now, I was a little disappointed, and that was her choice. I got enough rope in my garage to assault Everest. I'd have bought four-wheelers, Sea-Doos, anything. I said, hey, I want me and you to intentionally have a dad-daughter day because you're old enough now that I'm not cool. I get that. You don't want to be seen with me, but we're going to spend dad-daughter time. Where are we going to go? Well, Dad, I'd like to go to the mall. What? Yeah. The first time I went to the mall, they charged us so much money for exotic coffee, I thought I had to give them my ID. I said, you can't pay this much money for something to drink and not have to be carded. I said, but I learned all kind of stuff about the mall. I learned about Vera Bradley and what sizes were. And by the way, they lie about your size, ladies. The more expensive your clothes is, the smaller the size tag. Me, I buy Husky jeans. You know what that says? You're fat. Get over it. But no. You can pay extra money and wear a size 4. And at a different shop, it'll be a size 8. I'm just saying that's it. But I learned that. My daughter is tiny. She shopped at the 379 store. And, you know, I walked in one day, Lonnie said, Mom, those ladies in the 379 store were macking on Dad. Jack said, they were macking on your father. You see how he's dressed? I said, I'm in the room. She said, they saw you walk in and saw him walk in behind you and knew where the money came from. And so that's why they were paying me attention. But we spent a lot of days at the mall. Now, I did have to teach, escalator safety and some other things like that embarrassed her. But that's what she wanted. And you know what she talks about? Hey, me and my dad went to the mall. Now, she's been rock climbing in Colorado. She's been camping on Cumberland Island, backpacking. She knows how to shoot weapons. She's been rappelling. She's done all kind of cool stuff. But you know what she talks about? Going to the mall. But that was just me and her. And you make an investment into these things. And so when you start talking about how we're going to use our time, our money, our energy, that's super important in a decision-making process. Now, when you start talking about conflict resolution and you start talking about communication, two of the most significant scriptures in the Bible, theological significant scriptures, are Hebrews 4 and John chapter 1. Because in Hebrews 4 and in John chapter 1, you get a master class on incompatibility and how to overcome it. See, if I want to learn something, why would I not learn something from the master? When I was a little boy, a guy that went to church in Lineville, Alabama, he and I had gone on a mission trip together, and I had said that I had an interest in carpentry. Well, the summer that I was 14, he came and got me, every Thursday, by the way. Thursday's a special day at the Jones house. He came and got me and let me go to the cabinet shop with him. And I spent every Thursday of my 14th summer working in this guy's cabinet shop. I didn't get paid. I just got to play with power tools and learn how he built cabinets and stuff. I've learned to call people up and say, hey, I'm interested in what you do. Can I spend a day with you? When I want to learn to climb trees, I call a tree cutting group. I said, I'll hang out with you guys. I'll drag limbs. I'll haul lumber. I'll run the wood chipper. I'll sign a release. I just want to watch you guys do some stuff. You'd be surprised at people who tell you yes. And I've learned to collect experiences with people. I've learned to follow through. Well, if I'm going to get, you take the eternal spiritual being who's pure and holy, in the finite human who's weak and imperfect. And God said, I can fix that relationship. If you do what God did to fix that relationship, you can fix any relationship. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That is a theologically significant thing. Dwelt among us is a Greek word. It's the same word you would pronounce it. If you anglicize it, it would be tabernacled. Which is just fun to say, tabernacled. You know what the tabernacle was? It's a fancy word for tent. And the Word became flesh and tented with us. God went camping. He left heaven and he put on one of these. Now, if you could have seen him on the Mount of Transfiguration, you know what he looks like. Like he's made out of light and power. But for 33 years, he walked around one of these things that could feel anxiety and could sweat and could be hungry and could be thirsty and could be cold and could be hot and could be tired and have anxiety. My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to the point of death. And he lay on the ground in the Garden of Gethsemane, and there was sweat like great drops of blood. Everything you can experience, God himself came and experienced. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Look at Hebrews chapter 4. Because in Hebrews chapter 4, you get this insight into the priesthood of Jesus. And I really don't know if the theme of Hebrews is Jesus is better, don't quit, or don't quit, Jesus is better. I guess it really doesn't matter how you arrange that. But listen to what he says about the priesthood of Jesus. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14. Seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast, don't quit. Let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in the time of need. God says you can come to my throne and you can approach me boldly, and you can say, hey, I need help and I need grace in the time of need. That means you can walk up to God and admit you're imperfect and ask him to help you. And you don't have to be ashamed. You don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to be apologetic. You can simply say, this is who you are. This is where I am. And I got to have help. You know why? Because you've got a high priest who's been there. You've got somebody who attuned to your condition. And so when you start talking about conflict, and you start talking about crisis intervention, really the way to solve most of this is with a skill called attunement. And attunement is basically where you take all the interactions that look like this and you make them look like this. That's it. It's seeing the world from the other person's vantage point. Now, you can't see the other person's world from their vantage point unless you understand their love languages. You can't see the world from the other person's vantage point unless you understand that their needs are different than your needs, because you're two different people. I walk around in my head and you don't. And you walk around in your head and I don't. So there are some rules of engagement that you think are true about the world. And sometimes those rules are accurate, sometimes those rules are not. And I don't want to spend too much time on trauma, but when you start understanding trauma, and I'm not a long distance shooter, but I shoot a little bit. But if this is a rifle, and I'm shooting at a target downrange, and this is what straight is supposed to be, and at 100 yards on a minute of angle, I change the windage on my scope one click. That's going to move the vector of this bullet at 100 yards. It'll move it 1 inch. Everybody get that? Okay, as you extrapolate this line out into infinity, the further I go that direction, the wider this gap gets. So at 200 yards is 2 inches, at 300 yards is 3 inches, at 1,800 yards I'm hitting people in the next county, they don't even know I'm shooting at them, right? The further you go, the wider it gets. When I believe something about myself, because of the way my home of origin was, because of the way my dad acted, because I was abused, because I was neglected, because I was lied to, because I interacted, and I believe something about myself that I never check with reality, it's just inside my head, and I believe that for 1 year, for 5 years, for 15 years, the longer I hold on to that belief, the further away from truth I get. And that's how people develop dysfunctional ideas about the world. That makes sense? So I grow up thinking some things are true about me, and also think some things are true about you, and until I check with somebody, I don't know that they're not true. People who are good at math think everybody else is good at math. Stop it. We're not. Okay? I draw. I thought all my friends drew. Somebody come to my house and we would play outside and we'd climb the trees and swing on the fort. It would rain and we'd have to go inside. And what do you want to do? Let's draw. We don't draw. What do you mean you don't draw? You're a communist? I mean, I couldn't. Well, all of a sudden, I come into a marriage with, hey, I think this is what respect is. I think this is what love is. I think this is what affection is. And I'm married to somebody who, we just assume everybody sees the world the way we see the world, right? I mean, everybody likes cheesecake. See? and all of a sudden, so until I learn to view the world from my spouse's perspective, I'm a high priest who can view existence from what it is to be a human. Although he's not human now. He's eternal, he's spiritual, he's perfect. He knows what it's like to have one of these. And so he can be empathetic to our position. And if I can just demonstrate to my spouse, I get the world from your perspective. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to think it's reasonable. I don't even have to think it's rational. I just have to go, I get it. She's scared of spiders. I'm not. I got a spider as a logo on one of my business things. Honey, you know that there's only 2 venomous spiders in America. A brown recluse and a black widow. Yes. But when she sees a spider, guess what it is? It's a black recluse. And you have to kill it. I mean, it's just, you know, and I can argue with her about it, or I can go. And that's it. So that instead of, don't be afraid. Well, I'm afraid. It's silly to be afraid. Stupid to be afraid. You shouldn't be. You're afraid of spiders, aren't you? Let me take care of it. Now, you never enter into a person's delusion. Okay? We work with the cops. The cops shouldn't have to respond to mental illness stuff, but they do. Because it costs you nothing to dial 911. If you go into a mental health crisis and you call your therapist at 1:30 in the morning, that's an expensive phone call. It costs you nothing to dial 911. When you dial 911, they'll send you a young person with a fire hose, the fireman. They'll send you a person with a box of Band-Aids, the paramedic. Or they'll send a kid with a badge and a gun. Guess who they're going to send you? The badge and the gun, because you're scared and you need to make somebody do something. Well, guess what cops are trained to do? Ask, tell, make. And when a 28-year-old shows up, he's ready to play Batman and make somebody. And then we get on the news. And so what we're teaching our young cops is, if you show up and nobody's committed a crime and nobody's a danger and nobody's in danger, slow it down and start attuning to people. There's a guy in the middle of Walmart throwing green bean cans at a dragon. Sir, what's going on? I'm throwing green beans at this dragon. If you go, there's no dragon here. Guess what happens to communication? Now you're in an argument that there's a dragon, there's not a dragon. You don't go, oh yeah, it's a big red one. You go, there's 2 of them. You don't want to do that either. That's a problem. You just simply say, sir, I don't see a dragon. But I bet if you do, it's very frightening. Yes, it's frightening. How long have you been seeing dragons? How afraid of them are you? What are you doing to solve this problem? I'm throwing green beans at it. We've hit 9 customers. Hey, if you could not be here with the dragon, would you go with me? Would you ride the ambulance? Can I call your mom? Now, if you don't choose to leave, the manager is going to say, trespass him. And then I don't have any options. You will leave. And it goes back to ask, tell, make. But the minute I get him to say, yes, I'm afraid, well, tell me why you're afraid. Well, they follow me around and I see them. They live in my house. They live in my attic. They follow my car. They teach terrible things to me. I can't imagine how frightening that is. But you can't throw cans at them here. I'm sorry you're afraid. Let's go. Those dudes just walk out. We don't tase anybody. We don't spray anybody. We don't fight anybody. Well, what would happen instead of arguing with your spouse about what they feel or don't feel? You just simply said, I understand you feel this way. I didn't buy you flowers for your birthday and you feel like you're not important. Yes, you bought a new fishing rod. You remembered when hunting season was. You didn't remember my birthday. Oh, you think that saving money means not spending the full price and spending part of the price. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I appreciate the fact that you didn't buy it at full price. You bought it for $200 instead of $500. Did we need it? Was it urgent? Okay. but all of a sudden, you just go from this to this. It's the same thing when your kids go into crisis. What happens when your kids go into an emotional crisis? We are emotion dismissing. That's not how you feel. We're emotion denying. You don't feel that way. Or we're emotion disapproving. You shouldn't feel that way. Mom, I hate my soccer coach. You don't hate your soccer coach. Well, if you're in the 7th grade, you can hate a soccer coach, I promise you. Why do you hate your soccer coach? Well, this new kid moved into school and he started him in my position. So because the coach treated you unfairly and gave someone else your position, you're really, yes. I haven't told him he shouldn't hate the coach. I haven't told him he doesn't hate the coach. I haven't told him he can't hate the coach. I find out why he thinks he hates the coach. And once you get your yes, you're attuned. Then you're communicating. Well, where's the new kid from? Brazil. All right. So if the kid from Brazil was on your team, would you play here? Would you play him? I play him. Okay, fine. Now we've got a different step there. But all of a sudden, learning how to attune to my spouse's world, it's important to me because it's important to you. It doesn't have to be important to me. My daughter played Division I volleyball, I've mentioned. My wife coached 7th grade volleyball. The two worlds are not friends. Jackie is undefeated in regular season play as a middle school coach. Now that says something about her coaching and it says something about the quality of play in Huntsville, Alabama. I've been at the Northeast qualifier. I've been at the Big South qualifier. I've seen the Olympians play volleyball. 7th grade volleyball? Not so much. I go watch 7th grade volleyball, not because I'm interested in 7th grade volleyball, but I'm interested in 7th grade volleyball coach. And that's her world. And the city championship is nothing like the conference championship. And the city championship is nothing like the Gulf Coast championship. In a fast-paced college game, there's no comparison. But she's excited about it, so I'm excited that she's excited. And regardless of how I feel about volleyball, guess what? I watch an awful lot of volleyball. And my wife walks in the woods and looks at the trees I climb. Now, she doesn't go with me and climb trees, but when it's not deer season, she walks around and figures out, hey, when I tell you I'm sitting in this holler or Gerald's stand or the big oak, that's where I'm at. Oh, cool. And she attunes to that. Well, guys, your spouse measures affection not by physical touch, but by how well you figure out their world. Is what's important to me important to you because it's important to me? Not that it's an important by itself. Is it important to me? Does that make sense? This is my spring wardrobe. In the summer, I'll put sunglasses on. It'll be my summer wardrobe. In the fall, I'll wear a hat. It'll be my fall wardrobe. And in the winter, I'll wear a big coat. It'll be my winter wardrobe. My wife has different rules for wardrobes. When her dad died, she was in Auburn. She called and said, hey, they just called and said my dad died. He'd been convalescing a while. I'm going to leave Auburn and go to Arkansas. I said, honey, I'll meet you in Birmingham. I've got friends that'll bring me to Birmingham. We get in the same car. We drive to Arkansas together. We drive back. We don't have to be in 2 different vehicles. Cool. So, okay, if you're going to do that, then I need some clothes, okay? Go to my closet. I go to her closet. Go to the blue section. She has a blue section in her closet. I have a section in my closet with buttons, without buttons. That's, my hunting stuff stays in a different box so it doesn't get corrupted with smells. But there's shoes you can wear before Easter and shoes you can wear after Easter. You can't wear white before Easter and can't wear white after Labor Day. I said, do I need to carry a stainless steel pencil between Easter and Labor Day? No, I can wear color any color pistol I want between Easter and Labor Day. I just want to know the rules are. But there's all these things that if I don't know, I didn't know how important it was as a young wife to have a spring wardrobe, a new spring wardrobe. And I did some extra jobs so that we could buy a new spring dress. They made me go buy some new jeans at the mall. Not Levi's, but American Eagle jeans. Because Jackie said I was wearing old man jeans. Well, I'm an old man. And I like my baggy jeans. I walk in, and this little kid behind the counter goes, would you like a frequent buyer car, sir? I said, young man, the jeans I'm wearing are older than you. If this pair of jeans doesn't last me till I die, we're going to have a serious problem. Do you think I need a frequent buyer card? No, sir, I don't think so. So I bought my goofy, stretchy jeans. Anyway, I didn't know how important clothing was to her, and it's super important. How important it is to be at your mom's on Mother's Day. How important it is to have everybody together for breakfast at Christmas. Because we got up and hunted on Christmas Day before breakfast. So now we have brunch on Christmas. But it's that idea of taking your world and making it my world. And I don't have to think it's reasonable. I don't have to think it's rational. I just got to understand these ideas that you got from growing up and make them important. Now, I'm not going to enter a delusion, and I'm not going to foster unhealthy thinking, but I'm going to do my best to attune to you. I'm going to see the world, and I'm going to understand your needs. Now, when you start talking about love languages and his needs, her needs, go back to reciprocity. Love is the intentional and, if necessary, personally costly investment to the good of another, and it does not require reciprocity. It's not quid pro quo. Ideally, it would be, but oftentimes it's not. I don't do his needs, her needs, and say, now go home and tell your wife you don't understand my needs. You understand your spouse's needs, and you do your job. It's not contingent upon their behavior. And that's hard, because we want the solution to our marriage to be changing them. Well, the solution to my marriage is changing me, because I'm the only one I control. And I have to attune to the needs of my spouse, and the things that are valuable to her are valuable to me because they're valuable to her. And that's it. And it really does boil down to a mindset. It really does boil down to that commitment, that love is an attitude, that I choose to do this. And so when I start thinking, how did God make peace with me? God understood where I was at. And although God is holy and I'm not, he can say, this is what's important to you, your fears, your anxieties, your cares. How many times in the Bible are we comforted about things that are temporary in order for us to attain to the eternal? Give us this day our daily bread. God said, I know you have to eat because you're human. It's okay to pray about that. It's okay to pray about things that cause you trouble. Why? Not because they have some inherent value of holiness, but because God cares about us. And as God cares about us, we draw closer to him. Every time Jesus met anybody, Jesus started with where they were and what they needed. He never started with, hello, I'm Jesus Christ, I'm starting a church in 3 years. It was, what do you need? What do you want? What is missing in your life? And he attuned to the frailness of our existence to bring us into the holiness. Well, I'm not necessarily trying to make my spouse holy, although that's part of it, us being partners to go to heaven. It's just about me attuning and understanding her needs versus my needs, understanding her love language versus my love language. Now, love languages is basically the idea of how you say I love you is also how you like to hear I love you. And essentially there are 5 love languages. You can take the test online. I think it's Chapman's Love Languages. And it's basically physical touch, quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, and gifts. And you'll find out that, one of those things, when you take that test, they may be really close in score, but they'll stack out. When it comes to feeling close to my spouse, I feel close to my spouse when she buys me little things, or she does things for me, or we snuggle on the couch. And depending on how you hear I love you is how you say I love you. And if you assume that your spouse speaks the same way, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be giving directions to a person who's colorblind using the color of buildings. It will not work. And learning, hey, I need to know what's important to you and what's special to you, and that's the use of love languages. Now, this is a little weird of a thing, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I like to have my shoulders rubbed. I work out, I do push-ups, I do pull-ups, I got little bunchy muscles, and so when somebody rubs my shoulders, I want you to squeeze them till like you're trying to squeeze juice out of my bones, okay? I want a hard, if you can, take a rolling pin and roll, that's cool with me. Guess how I rub my wife's shoulders? And guess what she says? Ow, stop it, that hurts. You know how she likes to have her shoulders rubbed? Like a spider river dancing on your back. It's like you're trying to tickle me to death. When I learn that she likes to be touched lightly, because that's what she likes, and she says, oh, you need your shoulders rubbed, lay down, hold the couch, and I'll dig my heels into your back. That works for both of us. But if I don't pay attention to her world and I'm doing this when she's saying, ow, that hurts, we're not doing anything good. How does my spouse hear I love you, and how does my spouse say I love you? And it's really, whether she figures it out or not, I figured it out. And this is what I do for her. And so when you start talking about attunement, it's seeing the world from their perspective. Now, when you talk about attuning to their needs, a guy named Willard Harley did a survey of 5,000 couples, 10,000 people, and he did a survey and figured out that men and women have different needs. Yeah, right. Amazing. Top 5 needs for men. Sexual fulfillment. Men get married with the idea and the expectation that they're going to have sex. And Paul talks a lot about it in 1 Corinthians. He says, because of the rampant sexual immorality, a man has a wife, a female has a husband, and you don't defraud each other from that activity. Yet when we get married, after the kids come along, that kind of becomes a lower priority for females. It typically becomes a lower priority for females because it involves an energy thing. If you've got toddlers at your house, you don't have energy to have sex. Okay? And given the choice to go to sleep or go to bed, they'll go to sleep. And then the man asks and is turned down, and asks and is turned down, and then he quits pursuing her and pursues something else, or it just becomes a dead issue. Michelle Davis, in her book, The Sex-Starved Marriage, says that the person who's least interested in sex controls it. Now think about that for a minute. You've got a dynamic in your relationship, and the person who places the less value on it gets to decide if it's a thing or not. You wouldn't tolerate that anywhere else. Right? So be aware about the needs of your spouse. And this is so random, it hurts. When I visit places and the elders say, hey, we want to talk to you about some of our programs, and the first discussion I have with the elderships when I'm on the road visiting about a church that's trying to grow and being held back is I say, you realize the person who's least interested in sex controls it. And elders go, what? I go, the most rigid person in your church gets to decide what your church does. That's not what Romans 14 is talking about. The weak brother in your church, weakness means I'm uncomfortable with something and you can talk me into it in spite of my conscience. If I'm willing to divide the fellowship, withdraw my contribution, or leave over, I'm not weak, I'm just cantankerous. I'm not a super good swimmer. I'm 5'4", deep water means different things to me. Okay? I'm not getting in a boat without a life jacket. With all due respect, you can't put me in a boat without a life jacket. I'm a weak swimmer, and I'm not going to get in a boat without a life jacket. I've been in 2 good boats that left me. Okay, I spent about an hour and a half on the Tennessee River floating on a cooler. Not a fun thing, all right? I'm not going to do it again. Now, if you take me down to the river and say, hey, Lonnie, let's get in the boat. I wear my life jacket. I don't have a life jacket. getting in the boat. Hey, we're not going out very far. The water's not very deep. Okay, I'll get in the boat. And I hang on to the gunnels, and I'm scared the whole time I'm there. That's how a weak brother behaves. I don't think we should do this, but because you do it, I'll do it. And then they feel like, but if I'm mad, I'm going to withdraw my contribution, I'm going to leave. That's not what Romans 14 describes as a weak brother. That's an immature brother, but he's not weak. Okay? So the person who's least interested gets to control things. We wouldn't tolerate that in any other dynamic, but we let that pass as in marriage. So ladies, understand how valuable this is to a man. A man's self-esteem and a man's identity often comes from his sexual fulfillment. And the average male between ages of 13 and 23 has a thought about sex every 7 seconds. That's your average male. I'm not talking about that creepy little 7th grader who wants to hug everybody. Stay on the van, pervert. Where's the free hug shirt? See what I say? Sit down. I'm talking about the normal average person, okay? Well, if it's not that important to you, and ladies, we get it. If it's been the perfect day, you feel like intimacy. If the guy can be intimate, he's had the perfect day. That's the difference in our wiring. So gentlemen, you got to understand that starting the day with compliments, helping her with breakfast, sweeping the floor, getting the kids ready, that starts that thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. So number 1 for man is sexual fulfillment. Number 2 for man is recreational companionship. Men build intimacy by doing. We like you to be on our adventures with us. When we're dating, you go watch us play ball. You bring sandwiches while we repair the transmission. You ride around in our bass boats. You ride around in our golf cart. You go clap for us when we kill an animal. We're like little boys. We want you to play with us and watch us do stuff. We don't necessarily want you to do it with us. We just want you to be there doing it. I don't need help in my shop. I just want company in my shop. Come out while I run the lathe. Don't touch my equipment, But when you're dating, what do? You go places, do things with your husband. But then you get married, you get busy nesting, and then he hunts with his friends, or he hunts by himself, or he golfs with friends, and then the kids leave home, and you're not invested in the kids, and you haven't invested in him, and you guys aren't friends anymore. He married you because you're friends, and he'd rather hang out with you than those smelly guys he hangs out with. And you need to keep that up because that's what builds his relationship. Third thing a man needs is an attractive spouse. Now this has nothing to do with dress sizes, with weights on scales. It's just, do you put in an effort to make yourself pretty? Because when we were dating you, those were the rules. I can't see you till you're ready. And I sit and wait for you to make your entrance down the stairs. And then about 4 weeks into marriage, the terry cloth robe and the fuzzy bunny slippers show up. I remember the first time I saw that at my house. I said, honey, don't move, I can get it. My mother gave this to me. So you need to be saying, hey, am I putting on makeup? Am I wearing nice clothes? Or does all he ever see is you in the moo-moo? Because when we were dating, we got a different expectation. And by the way, we like the hair that you had when we dated. Don't color it, don't cut it, don't change it, keep it. That's the picture I have of you on my desk. I've been married to a blonde, a brunette, a redhead. That awkward 2 weeks that green-haired lady lived at our house. Too much for our time. I'd walk into church, where's my wife? I don't know if she's been to see her mother. I don't know what color her hair is. But I liked her hair the way it was when we married. And so we need an attractive spouse. And that doesn't have to do with your dress size or looking like you're 18 anymore. It's just putting some effort into being presentable. Number 4, we want domestic support. Now, I know in our modern society, we don't like those traditional roles. This is what the survey said. This is not what I'm saying. It just, people do better when there are defined roles, and this is what we do. In the back of my mind, she's a career lady. She got a master's degree in kinesiology. She taught school. She coached volleyball. But there's something in the back of my mind that I expect her to do the things that my mom did. Right, wrong, or indifference, that's an expectation I have as a guy. Now, we have this thing at our house of all the things that are chores, and we on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you hate the most? And the ones that she hates, I don't, so I do those. We kind of trade out on that. But there's an expectation that you're going to do some of those things because that's what moms do. Now, don't be mad at me and throw songbooks. If there's a bump in the night, guess who has to check it? You know why? Because I'm the guy. She'll, Jonesy, Jonesy, I heard something. You have a pistol, go clear the house. But it woke me up. So I'm supposed to find what woke me up, yes. Mystery solved. There it is. But no, I've got to get up. I'm in charge of all bumps in the night and all vermin. Why? Because I'm the guy. Now, if you're a guy and you have to get up and check your house, don't carry sporting equipment. Don't roam your house with a baseball bat. What do you expect to do? Find a guy in your living room with a ball and, hey, thought I'd come throw it. No, if you check your house, check your house. Don't carry golf clubs and baseball bats. But I'm in charge of all vermin and all bumps of the night because that's my job. Well, there's some things that she has to do because that's the mom thing. And then the fifth thing is admiration. That contempt thing, it goes deeper than that. This is about the dignity domino. And once you kick that dignity domino over, they all go over. When Paul tells women, or Peter tells women to be submissive and be chaste and quiet, he's not telling you that because you need to do that because you're inferior. He's telling you that's the language your husband speaks. Look in the Old Testament at the times women were disrespectful and women were respectful. David comes into Jerusalem with the Ark of the Covenant. May be the greatest political day in his life. And he's dancing he's trying to bring the ark and a guy got zapped dead. He leaves it. He finally goes out. They actually put it on poles and are carrying it like he's supposed to. Every 6 steps they sacrifice an ox. And David comes into the town. He's wearing a linen ephod and he's dancing before the ark. And his wife Michal looks out of her window and sees him and despises him. He blesses the people. He gives meat and figs and bread to everybody in the audience, women included. This is opulent. This is an Old Testament warrior king, and he's giving out party favors to the men and the women. This is an unbelievably high celebration. And when he gets home, his wife greets him with a double hipper and a foot tapper. She says, how glorious was the king of Israel today, uncovering himself as the base fellows does and from the maidservants. David's response is, when God chose the next king, he didn't choose anybody with your last name. He chose me. I'll dance before the Lord if I want to dance before the Lord. And you think the handmaid's got a show today? Wait till the weekend. And then the Bible says, and she went to her grave childless. Now this is the warrior king of Israel. This is the guy who killed a giant. This is the guy who walks downtown Gath, the hometown of Goliath, wearing Goliath's battle sword. This dude is secure. And yet when this woman treats him this way, they never have sex again. That's David. That's the warrior king of Israel, whose wife made him feel that insecure. He was done. You think you don't have the words to crush me? I'm 5'4" and bald. I'm not a warrior king. Ladies, if you don't give admiration to your husband, there's a price to pay. David is camping on the outskirts of the pasture land of a guy named Nabal. It becomes sheep shearing time, and he sends his young men in and says, hey, when you celebrate the sheep shearing, can my young men come to the feast? Nabal spits in their faces. He goes, who is the son of Jesse? Do you think there's anybody in Israel that doesn't know who the son of Jesse is? Who is the son of Jesse? A lot of servants run away from their masters. David's running from Saul. He's calling David a cheater, a coward, and a traitor. The young men go back to David and say, hey, listen, he treated us bad. David said, put your swords on. Now, in the Old Testament, he uses an idiom that I won't repeat here. But basically, in the oil fields, he said, put your swords on. We're riding in there, and we're going to kill everything big enough to die. That's male. And they are headed into this sheep herder's camp and about to go through it like a weed eater. And Nabal's wife, Abigail, meets David. Folks, at this point in the Old Testament story, the 400 men that rode with David, there is not a military force that can stand in front of them. And David's headed to town because this guy disrespected him. He's going to wipe it off the map. This lady rides out, She has figs and cakes. She gets off her mount. She bows to the ground. Read that speech. She said, hey, this was my responsibility. I should have treated the young men better. Please ignore my husband. He's a dog. By the way, you're the one who fights the Lord's battles. Now, that may not mean anything to you, but in David's mind, this is not a Lord's battle. This is a David battle. I'm going to go here and wipe his sheep herder out because he made me mad. And for the rest of your life, David, you'll be remembered as the guy who murdered a sheep herder. Woo-hoo. It's not a big deal to go kill a bunch of sheep herders. You fight the Lord's battles. And it clicks in his mind, this is not a Lord's battle, this is a David battle. And then she says, and when you get to be king, I hope God takes your enemies and casts them from you like a stone from the pocket of a sling. You think that's accidental language talking to David? David relents and doesn't ride into this camp. The poise and the respect and the admiration from this woman stops a military force that nothing else on the planet could have stopped at this time. And it's all because she gave the proper admiration. And it's not because you need to do it. It's because your husband needs it. You'd be surprised at men who sit in my office and say the only place I'm not respected in this town is in my own home. So those are the man's needs. Now, guys, just plug your ears a minute. Ladies, play with me, look good for me, clean up after me, and tell me how great I am. That sums up our needs. That's pathetic, okay? We're not complicated. If you can't do that, don't get a goldfish, okay? I mean, this should be hard to do. Sexual fulfillment, recreational companionship, an attractive spouse, domestic support, and brag on me once in a while. We're pretty simple creatures. The reason this often doesn't do what it's supposed to do is because we don't do this. And that's her needs. Her number one need is affection. And affection is not what you think affection is. It's not physical touch. It's that attunement. It's putting her world into my world and making it a priority. Jackie has a list on the refrigerator and it's labeled Keeping Up with Jones. And it's the 43 events I'm going to speak at this year. She knows what weekends I'm going to be, where I'm going to be, who I'm talking to, what I'm going to do. I know where I'm going to be speaking in 2027. I know what my appointment list is out at least with clients in the office, at least until August. I know when I'm going to go bow fishing. I know when the next UFC fight's going to be. I know when deer season opens. But I forget the trash truck comes on Monday mornings. And she walks out there and there's a big green thing and it's piled up with trash and she says, he can remember this, and this, and forgets this. I must not be important. I build this stuff in my garage and I make these things. And then the kitchen sink drips for 6 months. She said, hey, I know. Affection is not just physical touch. It's do you understand my world? Do you understand my priorities? And do you address that? Do you know her favorite color? Do you know her favorite food? Do you know her favorite flower? Do you know her favorite restaurant? Do you know the things that make her feel like you feel she's special? And do you go out of her way to address it? That's affection. Now, that number one leads to this number one. Let me just tell you. Not that you're manipulating, it's just the way things work. Number two on her list is conversation. Men build intimacy by doing. Women build intimacy by talking. When you were dating, and she was in your bass boat or your golf cart or walking around behind you in the turkey woods, you were comfortable. And you spilled your heart and your mind. You told her your hopes, your dreams, and your fears. And then you get married and you get burdened with work and mortgages and repairs and things and what else is on TV. Or you bury yourself in this. And then your conversations are, I don't know, yeah, whatever, it's okay. And she's lost her friendship with you. Because when you dated her, after you spent 4 hours with her and you spent 2 hours with her on the phone, she would finally call one of her friends and say, I've met the most wonderful guy. We can talk about anything. Am I wrong, ladies? Because you fell in love with us because we talked with you when you did stuff with us. Jackie taught school. In the summertime, she doesn't teach school. She's not teaching school. She's bored. I'm sitting at the office. My phone rings. Lonnie Jones. Hey. Hey, what are you doing? I'm working. And that sums up what I do. I work. They give me money. It could be corporate stuff. It could be seeing clients. It could be writing proposals. It could be writing books. I'm working. It suffices what I do. But then I have to go, what are you doing? Oh, I slept till about 8. Then I got up and I made those brownies. You know those brownies like we made when we were in the Smokies with your mom? She bought me that bathrobe. Not the pink robe with the cream. She'll talk 15 minutes and hadn't covered 5 minutes of her day. I'm not going to live long enough to finish this conversation. But if I go, yeah, that's fine, and I hang up, guess what she just heard? I'm not important to this guy. And so not only do I have to listen to her, I have to respond to her and tell her details, because women like details. It's really, really strange, the difference. Men's minds are like a series of little boxes, and our boxes don't touch. If I'm in my phone box, I can't be in my talking box. If I'm in my TV box, I can't be in my talking box. Our boxes don't touch. I've got a box in the middle of all my boxes, and it's empty. It's my favorite box. It has nothing in it. I can sit there for days. My wife will say, what are you thinking about? Nothing. And she doesn't believe. I have a nothing box. I go sit in the woods for hours and just wait on a suicidal deer to walk out. And I'm not stressed. I'm not concerned. I'm not worried. I'm not doing math. I'm not shopping. I'm just sitting there going. And when a deer disturbs my key, I kill it because I just got in my empty box. She doesn't. Her box doesn't work that way. She's all over the place, everywhere, 90 miles an hour. Everything in her mind touches like a bowl of string. But she wants to talk about my mind and her mind. Affection, conversation. Number 3 for her is openness and honesty. This is the deal breaker. Because without conversation, you can't be open and honest. You can't be transparent. If I see 100 couples this year and they've all had affairs, 99, one of those women will say, I can't believe he had sex with her. 99 of those women will say, I can't believe he lied to me. He said he was here, but he was there. He said he wasn't talking to her, but he was. He said they talked, but they didn't touch, and they did. What breaks down the fabric of a relationship is, fellas, a girl can't live with a guy she can't trust. And that's a deal breaker for them. She leaves her home. She leaves her family. She leaves her last name to follow you around. You better tell the truth about everything. And oftentimes we either are in an attempt to insulate her, we isolate her. When those kind of things happen, it ruins that marriage because she can't live with a man she can't trust. And if you're dealing with a third party, whether it's on text or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and me and a third party know more about me and my wife than me and my wife talk about the third party, that's called an inverse in intimacy. And when you have an inverse in intimacy, you're in the gate of an affair. And the minute you lie about it, are deceptive about it, or cover it up, it's an affair. Now, for church purposes, it's not a consummated affair. But for all practical purposes, you violated your marriage according to Shirley Glass and her book, Not Just Friends. So fellas, honesty and openness is right next door to conversation, because that's how your wife knows who you are and who you continue to be. Her 4th need is financial security. Now, she's got a job and you've got a job, she's got a career, you've got a career, but in the back of her mind, you're going to provide for her and the children like your dad did. And that's that traditional role. And fellas, it's important to work and work hard. It's important to do what it takes to make your family a priority. Not to be rich, not to have a house on the lake and a house at the river and a house in the... But just simply say, I'm willing to work hard to provide for my family. Because she left her mom, she left her dad, she left her last name to follow you. And whether it's your ideal job or not, you better be man enough to provide for those girls, to provide for that family. And that's a deal breaker with them. Because if you're not a person of integrity and a person of motivation and a person of responsibility, then she's followed you off into this wilderness of life, and you're not willing to take care of her. That makes you ultimately selfish. And then her last need is family commitment. She's got to believe that you will choose her over everything else. and you'll choose the children next to her. Your number one responsibility is to God. Your number one responsibility to God is her. And the Apostle Paul himself says, hey, I wish you guys weren't married so you could do it like I do it. But since you are married, we understand your spouse comes first in your duty toward God. The apostle even admits that. And guys, if we don't make them a priority, if they're not the thing that's number one on our list, she knows it, she feels it, and she responds to it. Now, again, this is not, hey, did you hear what Lonnie said about my needs? No. Did you hear what I said about your spouse's needs? And whether she does it or not, you need to do it. It's not necessarily a quid pro quo, but these things have effect on each other. And we can do this all afternoon. I could say pick right hand or left hand. You can, right hand. Pick a number 1 through 5. Well, number 2. Okay, so I'm not having conversation with my wife. Well, since I'm not having conversation with my wife, she doesn't feel like I'm being affectionate. But if there's no conversation, no affection, she's not going anywhere with me, and we're not doing anything together. And because of that, she feels like that she doesn't respect me. And because she doesn't respect me, then what's going to happen is that she's not going to really worry about how she looks for me, and she ends up just being my maid. When all she does is clean my house, then I'm going to play golf and fish and hunt and not be around her, and I'm not really going to tell her what I'm doing, and all it turns out is that I'm bringing home a check and she's cleaning the house. And we can do that all afternoon. When one goes away, the other goes away. It's not quid pro quo. It's not causal. It's just the way those kind of things work. And so when you understand the needs of my spouse, the love language of my spouse, and I'm willing to get out of my head and try to get into their head and turn our relationships from this to this, then we've done the ultimate cure for relationships that God himself did to cure the relationship with us. God saw the world from our perspective, and he addressed it and he dealt with it. And then if you take all that and just boil it down, it boils down to selfishness. Am I thinking about me, or am I thinking about you, or am I thinking about us? And when I hear the story of us, not me, not mine, but we, us, and ours, the difference in how you tell that story is the difference in whether or not I think it's a strong marriage or not, where that thing's going to work. I appreciate your kind attention. I appreciate the elders hosting this event. I appreciate you coming out on a Saturday to be with us.